Oh, well, hello everybody. It's me, Riley, from the A-Side, the show you've been watching. I'm here to do another album review, and listen, I know this isn't necessarily original, alright? I'm reviewing My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, an album that I obviously really like. You've seen my other Kanye videos, you know I'm a fan. Now, here's the reason why I'm doing this album. Is because, I promised an Arctic Monkeys ranked. And my computer crashed when I got to my #1 album recording it, and the files got corrupted, and it was over 30 minutes, and I thought, wow, I really don't want to do this again. So I'll get that done at some point, and I also have friends promised albums for a long time now. I've had a couple of them promise that I would review them and listen to them, those being Brockhampton's Saturation and some Hobo Johnson stuff, and I did promise those, and I'll do it one day, but right now I just don't feel like putting an effort, and if there's any album I know I can talk at length about without having to prepare at all, it's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I own a pretty nice vinyl copy of this album, although I do not recommend buying it because for some reason, whoever presses Kanye West's albums does a very poor job. The quality, I have this, and also Kids See Ghosts on vinyl, and they're cool collection pieces, especially this, because it's the special edition. It comes with multiple different slides you can have on the album cover, and it's triple vinyl, and it's very nice, and it has a poster of all the people who worked on every song, but the vinyl quality itself is very low, and also a very poor excuse to have a triple vinyl. They just don't put a lot on each side of the record itself. So yeah, it's not necessarily the highest quality product. If you don't listen to your records, you just collect them, and if you're a fan of Kanye, sure, pick them up. But if you actually like to listen to your records as I do, I would not recommend picking up a Kanye record on a Kanye album on vinyl. I don't know, maybe like College Dropout is a little better because it's more natural instrumentation, non-synthetic, but like Twisted Fantasy, Kids See Ghosts, they do not sound good. Anyway, getting into the history of this album. Now, this album is absolutely legendary. It is considered to be an all-time classic. One of the best albums of all time in a lot of people's eyes. I believe Best Ever Albums has it ranked at like 37 out of the greatest albums of all time. Rolling Stone named it the #1 best album of the decade, 2010's decade, of course, and I'm fairly certain Pitchfork had it in the top 3. A very acclaimed album. I'm sure you've heard of it. I mean, other than watching my video, if you've spent any amount of time on Twitter, I'm sure you've heard at least one music nerd go, "My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is amazing," because it is. It is an amazing album, and a really important album for Kanye as well. I feel like it really defined him as an artist. His first 3 albums, super beloved and super acclaimed, and then he put out 808 and Heartbreak, which now is an album that's a classic and beloved, and the cornerstone for most modern pop and hip-hop. But you have to understand, at the time, 808s and Heartbreak was an extremely polarizing album. This hip-hop icon who had released 3 classics in a row just all of a sudden switched this really sad pop sound, and people were kind of weary of it, and they did not enjoy this album at first. And then that followed out by his outbreak at the VMA Awards in 2009, where he interrupted Taylor Swift for the Best Video award, kind of put him in a very bad public light, and he disappeared out of the light for a little bit. People thought he was never going to come back, when in reality he had his A-team in Hawaii recording what many people consider to be his magnum opus of an album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Now, when it comes to Twisted Fantasy, there is so much to talk about in its production and being made, and all the people who worked on it. I mean, the cast of people who are on this album is absolutely huge as far as production and guest features. I mean, guest features alone. You have Justin Vernon of Bon Iver, Nicki Minaj, Elton John, Drake, Jay-Z, Rick Ross, Chris Rock. I mean, so many different people. And it's just amazing how many people we got together for this record. And I think overall this is a very important album in the scheme of music. and a landmark album for hip-hop and music in general. If you consider yourself a music fan or a music enthusiast, this is required listening. It's something you have to listen to, and it's something you should have an opinion on, at least from my point of view. Whether you like Kanye or whether you like hip-hop, you should have an opinion on this album because it's so important. The same goes for albums like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, The Wall by Pink Floyd, like OK Computer by Radiohead. They're albums you should listen to and have an opinion on when it comes to the grand scheme of discussing music and its impact and its history, especially in the modern era, as this is, like I said, one of the most acclaimed and impactful albums of the 2010s. And I know this album is also controversial as well, specifically for a man named Anthony Fantano, the Needle Drop. Ever since he reviewed this album in 2010, it's haunted him. People still bring up the fact that he gave it a 6 out of 10 all the time. And one of the things he said is it's not really about Kanye West's Dark Twisted Fantasy. And I absolutely disagree. I think this album sums up how Kanye sees himself, how he sees the world, and how he thinks people see him. One Hell of a Life is a song that goes into his fantasies quite a bit. I mean, his sexual fantasies, how he wants to be with a porn star, and what he looks for in a woman, and what he looks for in the sexual experience. And I would say that fits great into a concept of a beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy. Other songs, like Blame Game, more how Kanye sees his lovers, and how he was hurt, and how he sees himself, and how he sees his ex, almost as a fantasy, because it's so tinged through his ego. And that sounds like a bad thing, but it makes this album really interesting, because the man is so egotistical, and because this is his magnum opus, he put everything into it. It is an amazing experience to just look into this man's mind and how he sees the world. And because it's so egotistical, a lot of it is really over the top, and produced amazing. This album is known as something called maximalist, which is just going all out on beats and sound, and I think that's best seen on All of the Lights. So yeah, maybe I'll just get into the track list now. Now this album starts out with what is, I'm sorry for the glare, I tried covering it up and it didn't go well. This album starts out with what is probably my favorite album opener of the 2010s, Dark Fantasy. Now this just starts the album out on an epic note, and I use epic completely unironically. I know I hate the word epic, because you get those, bro, that's epic, those squeaker kids on like Call of Duty, but truly epic in the sense of the actual word. Opening this album with the auto-tuned voices, and then Nicki Minaj with a spoken word poem that's in a fake British accent, and it's so weird, but it's so amazing. And it kind of sets it up. Like, you might think you've peaked the scene. You haven't. The real one's far too mean. That's pretty much Kanye being like, I mean, Nicki Minaj said it, but it's setting up for Kanye being like, the fact that he is peak of the scene, the fact that he is the greatest. Like, you other rappers may think you've done really well, but you're not even close to me. And setting up the idea of his beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy. And in this fantasy, he is a living god. And on the Power music video, you can see that as well, where he's kind of set up as this great warrior, great god-like figure in the video. But back to Dark Fantasy. And then Kanye West starts rapping, I fantasize about this back in Chicago, which then also ties into the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy theme. This is him kind of setting up what we're going to see on the rest of this album. His look at fame and ego and how the world perceives him. He fantasized about this as a child years ago, and I think it does a really good job of opening the curtains and setting the stage for the rest of this experience. And I really think it helps get you invested, and after you hear Dark Fantasy, it hooks you into the rest of your album. You want to sit through the next 68 minutes of this album because just that opening is so good. You're like, oh my god, I need to hear the rest of it, and I honestly could not blame you. Just an amazing album opener, one of my favorite Kanye songs. And the beat, you can already hear the maximalism in the beat, just how rich and lavish it sounds. Really just an amazing track. Dark Fantasy is like a perfect album opener. I would say it's probably tied with Let It Happen from Tame Impala's Currents as my favorite album opener of the 2010s. There are a couple other really good ones, like Lit Me Up from Brand New Science Fiction, and like Rome from The Story So Far, Soil and Dirt. But I think Dark Fantasy reigns supreme. It's just an amazing album opener, especially because, as I mentioned, it gets the job done of setting the stage for the rest of the album. Then the album goes into Gorgeous, which a lot of people absolutely adore Gorgeous, and I think it's a great song. It's not my favorite on the album, but it brings a lot to the table. I'm sorry, it looks like I'm having a stroke. Like, my left eye is much bigger than my right eye. Comedy, everyone. This is why I don't script my videos, because sometimes funny stuff happens, and I let my personality shine through a bit more. Back to the album. Gorgeous. Has a great hook on it sang by Kid Cudi, further proving my theory that when Kanye West and Kid Cudi work together, they make some of the best songs of their career. I mean, specifically looking at Kanye, Cudi's been on just about every album from 808s to Kids See Ghosts. He was originally supposed to be on Yandhi. He had a verse on The Storm, which is fire. Of course, that didn't come out, and he wasn't on Everything We Need. But songs like Welcome to Heartbreak, all of Kids See Ghosts, Father Stretch My Hand. Really, Cudi shows that he is great on the hook, especially on this song, especially backed up by the beat, which is this guitar line, which is super, super nice. And the song does run a little long, almost 6 minutes, but I still really enjoy it, and I think that the beat that makes the guitar line and Cudi's hook together, wonderful. And then Kanye drops some all-time classic lines. Now, this album, of course, as I mentioned, is his view on himself, his views on fame, his views on other people, and his views on the world. And this is more his views of the world and how he views racism in America, which is a touchy subject right now. And I think Kanye does a very good job of handling it and how he sees it from his perspective, while dropping classic lines like, "What's a black beetle anyway? A fucking roach?" Classic line, and the lyrics on this song are biting and great. I especially like the third verse he dropped. Is hip-hop just a euphemism for a new religion, the soul music for the slaves that the youth is missing? But this is more than just my road to redemption. Malcolm West had the whole nation standing at attention. That's just really good. And I think Kanye sometimes gets a lot of flack for being kind of not the best lyricist in places. I mean, songs like Father Stretch My Hand, while being extremely enjoyable, yeah, the lyrics aren't great, but I don't think he gets enough credit, because sometimes he can write some really killer lyrics. I mean, like I just mentioned, is hip-hop just a euphemism for a new religion? It's an absolute amazing Kanye line. Like, that's something extremely intelligent and a really interesting comparison between, you know, how people put their faith in music and in, like, hard times and stuff, like when people face racism in America, how they can vent that frustration through something like listening to hip-hop or even making their own music. You know, you see Kanye making music about this to vent his frustration about it. Very, very interesting, and I think it's handled very well on this track. Like I said, it's a little long, but still a very, very enjoyable song, and very smart song lyrically from Kanye. And like I said, you don't always see Kanye making necessarily smart songs and writing super smart lyrics, but I think he does on Gorgeous. Next is the lead single from this album, the killer track Power. Now, in 2010, when Kanye dropped this, it must have been amazing. I mean, I was alive, but I was fairly young still. I was 7 in 2010. Wow, that was 10 years ago. I'm old. I was only 7 in 2010. I wasn't really paying attention to the hip-hop game when I was 7, but I'm sure it was amazing to hear Power, especially after some people were at the time disappointed with 808s, to hear a song like Power, where Kanye just sounds like he's on top of the world, and really the best of his game and the best he'll be. Saying stuff like no one man should have all this power. And really, it's a very egotistical song. He's flexing on everyone of how good he is and how amazing he is, but he proves it on this song. It's not just him flexing, because it's backed up with an amazing beat with some great samples like the that really helps drive the song forward with those claps. And then the 21st Century Schizoid Man King Crimson sample is really great. And the guitar on this song is amazing. And also the little bridge breakdown where it says it'll make his life so exciting, and then the guitar almost turns into like a synth, and it almost sounds like something off of a Weezer album from the 90s, like something Blue Album Pinkerton-y, like this weird synth line, but I absolutely love it. I think it's an amazing bridge, an amazing instrumental breakdown. I'm probably the best part of the song. But Power is one of the best songs on the album because it just bangs hard. It drives the entire album forward, and despite almost being 5 minutes long, there is never a dull moment in this song because it just drives you forward. I don't know how else to put it. It's just paced so well. It makes you excited. It gets you pumped. This is a fight song, most definitely. I think it's one of the best ever written. Power is an amazing song and a great lead single on Kanye's part. I mean, I think the song could get anyone excited to listen to a new album. And funny enough, Kanye says this is his least favorite lead single off of any of his albums, which is crazy because I think this song is amazing. Not only one of the best off of Twisted Fantasy, but one of his best tracks in general. And once again, the song brings up how the world views Kanye and how he sees that with the line like, they said I was the abomination of Obama's nation. That's a pretty bad way to start a conversation. This is kind of a jab at when Obama called him a jackass after the 2009 Taylor Swift incident. So Kanye knows that people hate him at this point and think poorly of him, and he does not care because he is still at the top of his talent, and he is going to let everyone know, including the President of the United States at the time, and I think that is a power move. No pun intended. So yeah, Power really shows that Kanye is at the top of his game, and he's not afraid of anyone, because he knows he is the best. And usually that egotism would be obnoxious, and it does get obnoxious on albums like Watch the Throne and on Spots and Yeezus, but I think on Twisted Fantasy it's backed up so well by great lyrics and great production, and the fact that this album is so amazing that really he can flex his muscles. And I think, once again, like I said, it fits into the concept of how he sees the world and how he sees the world viewing him. So Power, excellent track. Sorry for these weird little pauses. I'm trying to pause the recording in between tracks, just to kind of get my bearings and think about the next song before I start to talk about it. Then there's the All the Lights interlude, and if you skip the All the Lights interlude, you are a monster, because it's beautiful, and it leads perfectly into All of the Lights, which is the maximalist opus of this album. It's so big and so ambitious, from all the horns, and the band on it is just so loud and so big. At some points, it even overpowers Kanye, and I think a lot of people would criticize that, but I like it. And not to mention all the people who feature on this song. You can hear Kid Cudi, he sings a bridge. Rihanna is on there. Fergie has a verse. Drake is on there. And what's crazy is he'll take just a part of someone's voice and then put it somewhere in the beat. So they're listed as being a part of this song when really you can barely hear them. Drake is in the background going, whoop, whoop, whoop. And that's all he's on this song. But he's still credited. And there's so many other people. Elton John's on this track. I think Nicki Minaj might be in there somewhere. It's crazy just how many people he got. I'm going to look at a list, actually. Elton John on the piano, and many other people on so many different instruments, including stuff like brass, horns, trumpets, French horns, trombone, flute, violins, viola, cello, so many different instruments, and then additional vocals from Rihanna, Kid Cudi, Tony Williams, The Dream, Charlie Wilson, John Legend, Ellie Jackson, Alicia Keys, Elton John, Fergie, Ryan Leslie, Drake, Alvin Fields, and Ken Lewis. That is so many people on one track, and you don't even notice most of them because the vocals are just layered into the beat, and it makes the song feel so huge, and it's an absolute blast to listen to. The percussion can be a bit obnoxious if you notice it, if you kind of listen to it. Sometimes I'll tune into the percussion and hear it over everything else, and it'll get a little obnoxious. But besides that, and I'm sorry that I pointed it out, this song is absolutely amazing. And lyrically, the song is a story about a man who's trying to be there for his daughter, even though he messed up. And he's the reason why his daughter's mother left him, but he still wants to be able to see his kid and still try and be a good father. And of course, the story is not true, but it's a very interesting and kind of nice story that Kanye tells about a man trying to better himself. And I feel like that can also tie into Kanye's twisted fantasy, because I feel like he wants to better himself, a little bit. He wants to show maybe that he's not as bad a person as so many people made him out to be after the whole VMA Taylor Swift incident. And now, of course, we know that he's actually bipolar and has, actual mental health issues. But at the time, everyone just thought he was an asshole. And I think he wanted to kind of show people he wasn't. So in the process of winning everyone back with this amazing album, he kind of tries to tell a story of a man who betters himself. And I think that's an interesting story coming from a man like Kanye West. So I know I talked about this album quite a bit when I ranked Kanye's albums, and this is something I mentioned, but one of the best three-song runs on any album ever of all time is Monsters, So Appalled, and Devil in the New Dress. You hear Monster and you're like, wow, this is amazing, this might be the best song on the album. And you hear So Appalled and you're like, no, it's definitely So Appalled. And then you hear Devil in the New Dress and you're like, oh my god, this song is amazing. Which Devil in the New Dress is my second favorite Kanye West song. We'll get to that. Starting off with Monster, though, is a really fun song, honestly. It's a rap song that's supposed to be, horror-themed, so they're talking about, horror movies, and there are a lot of horror references. Like Kanye West mentions the mummy with the ever had sex with a pharaoh line, which is hilarious, by the way. Some people might think it's cringy. I think it's hilarious. Jay-Z gives a pretty good verse about, Godzilla, King Kong, and mentions all these different monsters, and then Nicki Minaj drops the best verse of her career, probably. It's absolutely fire, where she's just like, I'm great, you can all judge me and make fun of me, but, one verse is making more money than any of your albums, so, don't at me. And she just drops this fire verse and proves that she is a force to be reckoned with, and it really shows that she will be around for a long time in the hip-hop game. And I really think this is a song you should just listen to for yourself, because I cannot do Nicki Minaj's verse justice just by talking about it. It's that good. I'm not kidding. I don't even like Nicki Minaj, and I think that verse is fire. One of the best things about this album. I was obsessed with this song. And of course you can't forget about Rick Ross's great little opener. He pops in, calls himself fat, and then, leaves, but that's cool, because he does such a good job of setting up what the song is going to be, and then the Kanye West samples, here's one, for example, and then it goes into the hook that repeats throughout the entire song. It's just a cool little liaison into the hook, and I think the hook is really great, too, very catchy and fun to bop to, especially with the kind of tribal drums that play throughout the song, and the very subtle synth beat boops that play through it. I'm sorry, I know I'm eloquent, I have such a way with words, the little synth beat boops, but and it's really great. And then, of course, mentioning the Rick Ross opener is Justin Vernon of Bon Iver's little closer, the I cross the line and I'll let God decide, which is interesting, because it kind of is juxtaposed to the rest of this, whereas Kanye, Jay-Z, and Nicki Minaj and Rick Ross are all like, yeah, I'm a monster and I'm so cool, and are very proud of the fact that they are so-called monsters, and referencing these horror movies as if they were themselves. Bon Iver's little final breakdown at the end, his little verse where he sings, is kind of I don't know, not defeatist, but where he almost feels bad for the things he's done. He's like, I crossed the line, he's gonna let God decide, So So it's just kind of an interesting juxtaposition, those two viewpoints, how these people earlier were so proud of what they were, and Bon Iver is kind of ashamed of how terrible they've been. So it's just an interesting juxtaposition, and I think the song does not fit in the concept of a beautiful dark twisted fantasy whatsoever. But I do not care because it bops hard. It's an amazing song. So outtake, you just missed me rapping Nicki's verse because it's just so much fun. Yeah, that's enough talk about Monster. Going into So Appalled, which I think is an even better song than Monster. I love the pacing of this track, and I know it's a really weird thing, but I just love listening to this song. It's like 6 minutes, but it never gets dull because it's just paced so well. No, there are so many different verses on this song, too, but none of them last too long. None of them get obnoxious. None of them ever overstay their welcome. So it's really easy to listen to, and that's kind of what I mean by it pacing itself. I really like the beat. It's sampled from some kind of like ambient song. The do do do, really great synth line, and I love hearing it throughout the entire song. That's really what I come for on this track. Is just that little synth line that plays throughout it. I absolutely love it though. And of course, the concept of the song being how so much modern hip hop music is extremely vapid and materialistic. It's all about flexing and being the coolest person you can, and all about money, rims, and hoes, if you will, and the gangster life. And all of it is so vapid, and really most of them have nothing to say. The hook being champagne wishes and 30 white bitches. This shit is fucking ridiculous. Meaning, it's very sarcastic, like, oh, these are the things you're rapping about? I mean, come on. And the whole thing is like, rap about something that means something. Make music that has emotion and meaning and depth, not just stupid flexing and, you know, what a lot of the rap game is. And I feel like that's even more relevant to today than it was in 2010. I mean, 2010, of course, the bling era was terrible with flexing and being the coolest you can. But I think the 2010s is just as bad, too, in a lot of ways, what we have with a lot of the trap music now, which, you know, I'm not a fan of. But, like, the lyrics about, you know, something bad happened, I don't remember what it was, but another damn dance track gotta hurt. You know, these terrible things are happening, and you're just writing about, you know, partying and stuff. And that's what all hip-hop music had become at that point. And these guys were sick of it. And I think that's great. I think it's a great, I think it's a great concept for a song. I think it's a good message for a song. And of course, someone like Kanye who writes about stuff that's like important, like racism and mental health and emotion and sadness and all these things. It's good coming from someone like him. Of course, Jay-Z's on here too as well. And a couple other people, if you want to just give me a second to find it. Anyway, So Appalled is a great song. I love the production. I love the synth line. I love the orchestra. Just one of probably my second or third favorite song of the album, honestly. And then it gets real. So first you hear Monster and you're like, wow, this is amazing. This album so far, 6 tracks, all of them have been absolute bangers, and this song is amazing. And you hear So Appalled and you're like, wow, the pacing, so good. The concept, great. I love the synth line. This might be the best song on the album. And then you hear Devil in a New Dress. And then you found the best part of the album. The album hits its peak here at track 8, Devil in a New Dress. Wow. What an amazing song. I absolutely adore Devil in a New Dress. It's my second favorite Kanye song, my favorite track off this album. It's so dreamy sounding. The beat, of course, is extremely maximalist, but it's made up of this orchestra, and it's so, like, reverbed and out there, and it sounds so dreamy, and it just sounds like you're floating through air while you're listening to it. It makes you think of just this nice party and this nice, cool summer night, you know, and it's nighttime, and you're at this beautiful mansion at a party with all these people, all these famous people surrounding you, but you're only focused on this one girl, and that's kind of the concept of it. And this girl, like, you absolutely adore, and you think she's amazing, and you think she's beautiful, and you're going to live your life with her. but she's actually evil and is going to rip out your heart and eat it in front of you. Hence the devil, so terrible person in a new dress, looking absolutely beautiful. So that's kind of what it's about. Is Kanye goes for this girl that he thinks is amazing, absolutely adores, when in reality she's just going to rip his heart out, ruin his night, and ruin his life. And I feel like this is a jab at his ex-fiancée, Amber Rose, I believe, because they were engaged, then she like cheated on him and broke his heart, and broke off the engagement. That was gotten into a lot in 808, and it's brought up here, and we brought up again. But just this entire song is just Kanye like grilling this woman, because she like is so cool, but in reality she's kind of like a bad person, and it's just a fun little way to write this song. I really enjoy the lyrics on it. I seen good Christians make bad decisions. Oh, she do it. What happened to religion? Oh, she lose it. This woman is pretending to be this upright religious girl, but in reality she's gonna, be in the corner, in the bedroom with a different guy every night at these parties. So really, she's not religious. She's just pretending to be an upstanding, cool person. Oh, I'm loyal. Oh, I love you. When in reality, that's not true. And Kanye knows it's not true. But honestly, at this point, he doesn't care because he's having the time of his life. But it will bite him back later. And it's just super dreamy and lovely, and the beat, and I absolutely adore it. And then, of course, Rick Ross spits just the best verse of all time. I love Rick Ross's verse. Looking at a bitch, I bet she give your ass a bone. I made a little funny meme. Maybe I'll make it the thumbnail, I don't know, of Thomas Jefferson. And it had his opening lyrics to his verse, and it was credited as Thomas Jefferson saying it. Very funny meme. Trust me. But I love this song. Just purely, not only because it's fun, and I like how it's a fun concept, after So Appalled being a fairly serious song. I like that Devil in a New Dress is fun, and playful, and about something a little more relatable, like getting your heart broken, but still having fun, even though it's going to hurt you. Just a really great song. I could probably talk about it for hours. I love the sample, and it goes great with the orchestrated beat. And just thinking about it, I feel like I'm floating through space. It's such a good song, and I'm such a nerd that I can talk about this album for 32 minutes straight, and I'm not even close to being done yet. Overall, just an amazing song. I love Devil in a New Dress. And then it goes into track number 9, which many people consider to be the best Kanye West song, Runaway. I love Runaway. I do really love this song. It's kind of the centerpiece of the album. Kanye made a 30-minute short film called Runaway to counterpiece this album, which this video is already longer than that. God, I need a life. Yeah, my leg fell asleep. Runaway is a great song, and it's about just not being the best person, and you know it, but you can't help it because you're you, and this person should love you anyway, and people who really love you will stand by you, even though you're kind of a dickhead. It's iconic at this point. Raise a glass to the douchebags, have a toast for the assholes. It's iconic, honestly, and I love every minute of it. And one line has always stuck out to me. It's the never was much of a romantic. I could never take the intimacy. That line has always stuck out to me as being like my favorite line in this album, just because it hits me so hard every time. It's something I can relate to. It's hard to be one-on-one with somebody, and I just think that line and the way Kanye delivers it just really sums up what that feeling is, how hard one-on-one and romance and love can be, and how hard intimacy can be. It's scary sometimes. Extremely scary, and I think the way Ye delivers this line, and just the way it's so blunt, there's no metaphor, it's just, I'm not a romantic, I can't take the intimacy, and that's just, wow, me too, man. Super relatable stuff. And Pusha T gives a great verse, and of course, the performance that was given, I believe also at the VMAs, No, the MTV Music Awards. I think they might be the same thing. No Script, don't at me. Is iconic. When he first debuted the song, first debuting Twisted Fantasy, Pusha T comes out. Absolutely amazing moment. Dig that up and watch it because it's great. And Runaway is really the centerpiece of this album. And once again, tying into the whole beautiful dark twisted fantasy, this is once again how Kanye views himself and views the darker sides of his personality. That sometimes he is a douchebag. He can be an asshole. He can be a scumbag. He can be a jerk-off. He can't take intimacy. He's bad at love. And that's how he views his darker sides. He's saying on the song, you know, I'm not perfect. But you, if you really love me, you will accept those parts anyway. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize nowadays. I feel like so many people expect everyone to be so perfect, especially historically speaking. Like, looking back on the past, you can look at someone who did something bad, like, and call them out for it, and then completely ignore all the great stuff they did. Certain historical figures, I will not get into it because I don't want this to be super controversial. But I think it can also reflect on that. It can also reflect on how people view you personally. Someone might think you're an asshole because of your flaws, even though you could still be a really great person. But if they do view you as an asshole because of some of your flaws, really, those aren't people you should be interacting with anyway. And I think Kanye does a good job on this song. I think Pusha T, once again, drops a great verse. But this is kind of where the album starts to lose me a bit. The song is 9 minutes, and there's a 5-minute outro while Kanye's voice is being very, very pitch-shifted and auto-tuned, and he's going, and hums for like 5 minutes in the outro with the piano playing. It's obnoxious. I skipped the Runaway outro. I am one of those people. And for me, this is where the album kind of falls apart a little bit. And this is why I cannot call this album perfect, because the Runaway outro, and even though I adore Runaway, I skip the outro every time. The first half is emotional and beautiful, and a look into this man's soul, and into this man's vices, and really the vices of all of us, and the things we struggle with, the things he struggles with. And then the second half of it is just so dumb and wastes my time. And then Hell of a Life is the next song, and it's easily the worst track on this album. I hate Hell of a Life. It's bad. It's a bad song. But I will give it credit. I think it is, it's definitely very defining of the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy concept, especially the dark twisted part. This song goes into Kanye West's sexual fantasies and what he wants out of those things. Like the line, I just fell in love with a porn star, or one day I'm gonna marry a porn star, which he kind of does, actually. That does happen. And I hate the song, because I'm not one for things that are super overtly sexual in the first place, but my big problem with the song is the hook. It's a terrible hook. Awful. Just awful. It samples the melody from Black Sabbath Iron Man. The can he lost his mind? Can he see or is he blind? And Kanye takes that and makes his own version of it. The pussy and religion is all I need. It's terrible because it plays. The song is 5.5 minutes long, and the hook plays so many times throughout the song. It gets grating and obnoxious. And I never want to hear it again. I usually skip the song. The hook is just the worst part. It makes the song unlistenable, honestly, because it plays over and over and over and over again and does not stop, and I cannot stand it. I cannot stand Hell of a Life, and honestly, this kind of brings it. It is what really stops me from giving it that perfect score, because the rest of these songs, I do have problems with the rest of these songs, but they can be ignored, whereas Hell of a Life, I cannot ignore that I hate this song. And I don't think the beat is very interesting either. I think it's loud and annoying, and it's not loud in a industrial noise way. It's just poorly made. Yeah, not a fan of Hell of a Life. And then it goes into Blame Game, which is a song about his ex-fiancée, and how, someone is cheated on and what happens. And John Legend sings on the song, and it's absolutely beautiful, his voice, and about the ending of this relationship and how he views this woman and how this woman views him, and just how this toxic relationship is ending in the worst way possible, with her cheating on him, and just a relationship at its end. But it's a beautiful song. The pianos, Kanye's verses, especially John Legend's voice, and then the second half of the song, which conceptually ties in with the rest of the song. He calls this girl while she's hooking up with another guy, and she accidentally answers and hears them talking, and it's Chris Rock plays the other guy, and it's a comedy skit, and it is funny, but on repeated listen to this album, it does get old, and I typically skip it, which is hard when you have the vinyl to skip stuff like that. And the same goes for the Runaway outro, too. I think the Runaway outro is worse, because at least this is funny, but it's not something I want to listen to every time. But the song itself is really nice, and it shows how they're blaming each other for everything, hence the name Blame Game. Also some really biting lyrics. I'll call you bitch for short as a last resort. You can tell, like I said, the relationship is absolutely falling apart, and these two people are becoming extremely bitter toward one another. And I think it's a really good look at Kanye's more relationship-based side, and how sometimes things don't work out. But then it's followed up with Lost in the World, which is based off of a letter that Kanye West wrote to Kim Kardashian when they first got together. And it's such a sweet, sweet song. It's 4 minutes, but it feels fairly short. Of course, Bon Iver sings parts of it, and it's just a very sweet song, and a very touching ode to Kanye West's future wife. And you can tell he really loves Kim Kardashian. It's a very sappy, romantic letter, and very sappy, romantic lyrics, like "You're my heaven, you're my hell." Let's take a quick look at them. I'll read some off. They're really nice. You're my devil, you're my angel, you're my now, you're my forever, you're my freedom, you're my jail. Pretty much just the fact that Kim Kardashian is absolutely everything to Mr. West, and it's a very, very sweet song. I think the auto-tune and the harmonies of Bon Iver, of the "I'm lost in the woods," are great, and the "I'm lost in the world," absolutely amazing. I think it's a really, really good song. Maybe not as noteworthy as the stuff on about the first 3/4 of the albums, like tracks 1 through 9. Not as noteworthy as those amazing songs, but still quite a lot of quite high quality and a pretty good closing track. And then it ends on "Who Will Survive in America," which is just a speech that I don't really care about. And yeah, but the little last leg of this album, from "Hell of a Life" to "Who Will Survive in America," is just not as strong as the rest of the album. I think it tells. If "One Hell of a Life" wasn't on here, I could definitely give it probably a perfect score. I could ignore my problems with Blame Game and Lost in the World and the "Who Will Survive in America," but I cannot ignore how bad Hell of a Life is. So that is my extended thoughts on Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Of course, I ranked it, I believe, at number 4 when I ranked Kanye's albums, which says a lot about Late Registration, Graduation, and Kids See Ghosts, because I love this album. I think it's really good. Like I said, I definitely do agree with Rolling Stone placing it as the #1 best album of the decade. I think objectively, it's pretty high up there. It was pretty high up there for me as well. It's one of my personal favorite albums of the last decade. One of my personal favorite hip-hop albums of all time. Of course, Kanye West being my favorite rapper, and being in my top 20 favorite artists of all time. Of course, what people consider to be his magnum opus is going to be an album I absolutely adore. So, on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I am feeling a 9+ out of 10. That's right, Needle Drop. Love you, Anthony. Yeah, so 9+ out of 10 on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I said that really fast. You should definitely listen to it. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. What are some of your favorite tracks? How would you rate it? What do you think of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy? Well, what do you think of Ye in general? I don't really have a good way to close out my videos yet. I'll think of one eventually. So I'll get that Arctic Monkeys video reshot eventually. And don't worry, I'll do Brockhampton and Hobo Johnson. And I'll have other stuff down the pipe. Maybe I'll do a review on Run the Jewels 4. I still haven't listened to it. Or I don't know, maybe something else that came out this year, just in New Order. Again, some Cure. I have a couple. I don't have any ideas, actually. Mostly just stuff I need to catch up on. So, thanks for watching. I'm sorry this was long. I do really love this album, and I had a lot to say about it, and I could probably sit and think about more to say, because it really is a very interesting album. An album that just defines the 2010s, defines modern hip-hop in general. It's kind of a nice send-off to the Bling era, almost, because it's so big and so bombastic, and afterward, Kanye would go in different directions, something like a Yeezus, where it was, dark and gritty and loud, and then Pablo, which was manic and wild, and then Ye, which was stripped back and minimalist. I feel like this was a really great send-off to the early years of Kanye, the more playful, fun parts of Kanye's career, like College Dropout, like Graduation, and a good send-off to the Bling era, and really showed that hip-hop would, from that point on, be going in a more darker direction, like some of the tracks on this album, such as Blame Game or So Appalled. And then we'd see that on Yeezus and Pablo and Yeah and Kids See Ghosts. And then the eventual emergence of trap sounds and Kid Cudi breaking out the year before. It really showed which way hip-hop was going, and I think kind of steered hip-hop in that darker direction. So yeah, that's my beautiful dark twisted fantasy. Thank you for watching. I will see you all next time.